I want you to picture a forest. Let's say Northern Europe. And let's dial the clock back, about 2,000 years.
Okay, I'm with you.
You're sitting around a fire with your tribe. It's dark, the woods are thick, and you can hear the wind howling a little. You're talking about the hunt, maybe the weather, the spirits of the trees. But there's one thing, one specific thing, that you absolutely do not talk about.
You're setting a pretty spooky scene here to kick things off.
I am, because I'm talking about a taboo so strong that it actually changed the English language forever.
That's a big claim.
Well, think about it. We have words for wolf, fox, deer. These are ancient original names. They go way, way back to the roots of our language.
Yeah.
But the word we use for the apex predator of those woods, the king of the forest,
Yeah.
it's a lie.
It is. It's a complete fabrication. It's a placeholder.
Today on the Deep Dive, we are talking about the bear. And I think the best place to start, it has to be, is with that word itself. Because bear isn't its name, is it?
No, it's not. Not its true name, anyway. From a linguistic perspective, bear is basically a nickname that got, completely out of hand.
A nickname.
Yeah. If you trace the etymology back, it comes from the Old English word bera, and that links back to these Proto-Germanic roots that just mean the brown one.
The brown one. That sounds like something straight out of a Tolkien novel, like a character name.
It does, but the reasoning was incredibly practical. It's a euphemism. The theory, and it's a very strong one, it's supported by a lot of historical linguistics, is that the Proto-Germanic peoples were just genuinely terrified of this animal.
So terrified they couldn't even say its name.
They believed in a sort of magical causality. If you spoke the true name of the beast, you might summon it.
Like Beetlejuice. If you say his name 3 times.
Essentially, yes. Or, Voldemort, he who must not be named. It's the same principle.
Right.
You have to put yourself in their shoes. For these tribes, a bear wasn't just an animal, it was a monster. It could stand on 2 legs like a man, it could disappear into the earth for the winter and then come back to life in the spring.
A symbol of resurrection.
Exactly. And it could kill you with a single swipe of its paw. So out of pure fear, they just stopped saying the true name. They called it the brown one.
And the crazy part, the part that really gets me, is that we did this so effectively that we actually lost the real name.
We did. It was a conscious effort that became an unconscious habit, and it wiped the word from the entire Germanic branch of languages. It's gone.
So how do we even know it's missing?
Well, we can guess at it by looking at other languages that didn't have this specific taboo. You look at the Greek arctors, or the Latin Ursus.
So Ursa Major.
Precisely. The original Proto-Indo-European word was probably something like Urkdo, but in English, in German, in Swedish, the true name is gone, extinct, wiped from the vocabulary.
That is such a heavy way to start an episode. It really frames how we've always seen this animal, doesn't it? It's always been this figure of myth and deep primal fear.
Absolutely.
But our mission today is to, strip away that brown one label. We want to find the actual creature that's hiding underneath the euphemism.
And the creature underneath is, it's fascinating because it is a walking contradiction.
It really is. I was looking through the source material you sent over, and my biggest takeaway was that bears don't seem to know what they want to be.
How do you mean?
Well, they have the digestive system of a pure carnivore, but most of them eat berries. They look like big dogs, but they move and stand up like people. They're these massive, high-calorie burning machines, yet they've completely mastered the art of doing absolutely nothing for months at a time.
That's the Ursidae paradox, as some biologists call it. They are members of the order Carnivora that have, for the most part, abandoned meat.
An apex predator that's mostly vegetarian.
Exactly. They're often more peaceful than we give them credit for. And biologically, they have solved medical problems like muscle atrophy, kidney failure, that modern science is still just scratching its head over.
We are definitely going to get into the medical miracle of hibernation later on, because the fact that they don't pee for 100 days is, it's both disturbing and incredibly impressive.
Physiological masterpiece. There's no other word for it.
But first, I want to figure out what a bear actually is. Because when I go to the zoo or I see a grizzly in a nature documentary, my brain automatically categorizes it as big dog.
Which is fair. It's an understandable classification.
Is it accurate, though?
It is, to a point.
Mm.
Taxonomically, they are caniforms. That literally means dog-like carnivores.
Okay, so there is a link.
A very old one. If you go back about, say, 40 or 50 million years, the ancestors of dogs and the ancestors of bears were undeniably cousins. They split from a common lineage. They share a lot of the same hardware, non-retractable claws, similar snout structures.
But they aren't dogs. They're not just giant Labradors.
No. They split off a long, long time ago. And this is where the family tree gets really interesting if you want to find the bear's closest living relative.
The one you could do a DNA test on today and get the closest man.
Exactly. You don't look at the wolf. You don't even look on land.
Wait, what? Where do you look?
You look in the ocean.
You're kidding me.
Not at all. You look at the pinnipeds.
Pinnipeds, you mean like seals?
Sea lions. Seals, sea lions, walruses. Genetically, they are the bear's sister group.
My mind is officially blown. A grizzly bear walking through Yellowstone is basically a land seal.
Or a seal is a water bear. Both statements are true. Morphologically and molecularly, they are sisters. They split off from a common ancestor.
What was that ancestor? Do we know?
We do. We have fossils. They're a group called the Amphicynodontinae.
Amphicynodontinae. Okay, try saying that 3 times fast.
I'd rather not. But just picture a creature that looks like a mix between a small bear, an otter, and maybe a beaver.
So a little water weasel thing.
A semi-aquatic mammal, yeah. And at some point in their history, one group of them decided, you know what? The water is great. Let's just go all in. Those became the seals and walruses.
And the other group?
The other group said, nah, we prefer dry land, thanks. And they evolved into the bears we know today.
Is there definitive fossil proof of this? Or is this just kind of pieced together from DNA?
Oh, there's proof. There's a really famous fossil called Cuihila darwini, which was found up in the Canadian Arctic. It's often nicknamed a walking seal.
A walking seal.
It had these big webbed feet, but it also had long legs and a long tail. It looked a lot like a modern otter, but the skull was undeniably bear-like. It's the perfect missing link that connects that grizzly in the mountains to the walrus on an ice floe.
That actually explains the swimming. I mean, we've all seen polar bears swim, and that makes sense. They live on ice. But I've seen footage of black bears and brown bears just swimming across these massive lakes, and they look so incredibly comfortable in the water.
It's in their blood, or rather, it's deep in their ancient history. Even a black bear living in the middle of Tennessee has that deep ancestral memory of being semi-aquatic. It's just baked into their biology.
So, okay, we have this water-loving ancestor, this walking seal.
Mm-hmm.
How do we get from that to the massive Kodiak bears of today? Because the sources mentioned an early ancestor called Perictus. It wasn't very impressive.
Perictus. No, not impressive at all. If you saw one running around in the late Eocene about 38 million years ago, you wouldn't run away screaming. You'd probably try to pet it.
How small are we talking?
Raccoon-sized. Maybe even smaller. Think of a very small, slender badger.
A badger bear.
Basically. It was living in a world that was much warmer, much more tropical than today. It was a little scavenger, eating insects, maybe some small lizards. It was an underdog, really.
So it took a long time for the bear lineage to bulk up.
Millions of years. The real grandfather of all the modern bears is a genus called Ursidae, which showed up in the Oligocene. That's when you start to see the real size increase and, crucially, the teeth starting to change to handle more vegetation.
And from Ursidae, the family tree just basically explodes.
It branches out, yeah. It really diversifies. And this is where we get the cast of characters for the modern bear family. And the very first one to pack its bags and leave the family reunion was the panda.
The panda is always the outlier, isn't it?
In almost every single way. Genetically, the ancestors of the giant panda, that's the subfamily Eleuropodinae, diverged from the main bear line about 19 million years ago.
19 million. That is a massive separation.
It's huge. To put that in perspective for you, humans and chimpanzees only split maybe 6 or 7 million years ago. Pandas have been doing their own thing, completely separate from all other bears, for nearly 20 million years.
It actually explains so much why they look so different, why they act so different.
Precisely. There are the weird cousins that moved to a commune up in the mountains and just stopped answering emails. While all the other bears were evolving to hunt or scavenge across these diverse landscapes, the panda backed itself into an evolutionary corner with bamboo.
We are definitely going to do a deep dive on the panda problem later on, how an animal survives on what is essentially cardboard.
Yeah.
But I want to stick to the timeline for now. So the panda leaves. What happens next?
Then you get the invasion of the Americas. A group called the Tremarctinae, or the short-faced bears, makes its way across.
The sources describe these things as the terrors of the Ice Age.
And they were. They were absolute nightmares. Specifically, a species called Arctodus simus, the giant short-faced bear.
How big are we talking?
Standing on its hind legs, it was maybe 12 feet tall. It had these long, lanky legs, almost like a hyena. It was built for running down prey on the open plains of Ice Age America. Unlike modern bears, which are built for stability, these things were built for speed and devastating power. They were the dominant megafauna predator in North America for a very long time.
And they're all gone now.
Almost all of them. The Ice Age ended, the megafauna they preyed on died out, and they couldn't adapt. But there is one survivor, one lonely descendant of that terrifying lineage still alive today.
The spectacled bear.
The spectacled
No,
bear,
that-
yes.
Yeah.
Down in the Andes Mountains of South America, it's much smaller, it's very shy, and mostly eats fruit and bromeliads. But if you look at its genetics, it is the last of the short-faced giants.
That's kind of tragic in a way.
Evolution is often tragic, but it's also incredibly prolific. Because while the short-faced bears were dying out, another subfamily, the Ursidae, the modern bears, was taking over the entire world.
So this is where we get the ones we know today.
This is the explosion that happened about 5 million years ago. This gives us the American black bear, the brown bear, the sun bear in Asia, the sloth bear in India.
And the king of the north, the polar bear, where does he fit in?
The polar bear is the new kid on the block. He's the latest model off the production line.
How new are we talking?
Shockingly new. The genetic evidence suggests that polar bears diverged from a population of brown bears only about 400,000 years ago.
Wait, only 400,000?
Yeah.
In evolutionary time, that is. That's the blink of an eye.
It's nothing. It's yesterday.
So what happened? Some brown bears just wandered north, got stuck by glaciers during an ice age, and turned white.
That is essentially it. A population got isolated, probably around the British Isles, and they adapted with frightening speed.
What kind of adaptations?
Well, they went from being omnivores eating berries and salmon to being hypercarnivores that survive almost exclusively on seal blubber. Their fur turned white. Well, technically it's transparent hollow hairs, but it looks white for camouflage. Their paws became these massive webbed paddles for swimming. Their necks got longer to keep their heads above water when they hunt.
And because it was so recent, they're still genetically compatible, right? They can interbreed.
Yes, absolutely. A brown bear and a polar bear can still mate and produce fertile offspring. They call them pizzly bears or growler bears.
A growler bear. That sounds like a creature from a Dungeons & Dragons campaign.
It kind of looks like one, too. They often have the white fur, but with brown patches, and they have the humped back of a grizzly, but the longer neck of a polar bear. It's a living, walking reminder of just how closely related these two species still are.
It really highlights that adaptability you mentioned earlier. The bear family seems to have a tool for every single job. You have the panda eating bamboo, the polar bear hunting seals on the ice, the sloth bear sucking termites out of mounds in India.
And yet, underneath all of that incredible specialization, the basic chassis is the same. The skeleton, the muscles, the brain, it's all unmistakably bear. And that chassis is built very, very differently from the other carnivores we know.
That's the perfect segue. I want to talk about that chassis because when I see a wolf run, it flows, it's graceful. When I see a bear move, it lumbers, it looks heavy. Why is the design so different?
It all comes down to their feet and how they walk.
Their feet.
Yeah. If you look at a cat or a dog or even that wolf you mentioned, they are walking on their toes. It's a posture called being digitigrade. It's like they are wearing high heels all the time.
And that gives them speed.
Exactly. That leverage gives them that explosive, springy speed.
But bears aren't wearing high heels.
No, bears are wearing combat boots. They are plantigrade. They walk with their entire foot from the toe all the way to the heel, flat on the ground, just like you and I do.
So what's the evolutionary trade-off there? Because if I'm an apex predator, don't I want speed?
You want speed if you're chasing gazelles across the savannah. But bears aren't endurance runners. Their trade-off is for stability and power.
How does walking flat-footed give them power?
By having that flat foot, a bear has a much lower center of gravity and just incredible balance. This allows them to do two things that wolves can't. First, they can stand up comfortably on their hind legs for long periods of time.
Which is terrifying when you see it in the wild. It makes them look uncannily human.
It does, and it lets them survey the landscape, smell the wind from a higher vantage point, and intimidate rivals. But the second advantage is grappling.
Grappling.
A bear can fight with its front paws because its back legs are solid anchors on the ground. A wolf has to bite. A bear can literally wrestle you to the ground.
It also frees up those front paws to do more than just run.
Exactly. This is a huge point. Because they aren't relying on their front paws for that explosive speed, they've retained a level of dexterity that is really rare in large carnivores. They can rotate their forearms, they can grasp things.
I read about them being able to peel fruit.
Oh, easily. A bear can hold a fish between its paws, it can tear open a log to get at grubs, or it can delicately pluck individual berries from a bush. In the case of the panda, they've even evolved a false thumb. It's an enlarged wrist bone, just for the purpose of holding bamboo stems.
A false thumb.
It's a level of object manipulation that you usually only see in primates.
Now, you mentioned they stand up to smell the wind. The sources were pretty emphatic about their sense of smell. We always hear about bloodhounds, but the bear is in a totally different league.
The bloodhound is the gold standard for dogs, but the bear is the gold standard for mammals, period. The olfactory bulb in a bear's brain, that's the part that processes smell, is up to 5 times larger than a human's, and it's significantly larger than even a dog's.
Can we even quantify that? What does that mean in the real world? How much better is it?
It's hard to put a number on it, but think of it this way. A human navigates the world primarily by sight. We see a mountain, we walk toward it. A bear navigates by creating a scent map of its world.
A scent map.
They aren't just smelling a dead deer, they are smelling the 3D geometry of the wind currents carrying that scent. They can detect a carcass from 20 miles away if the wind is right. They can smell a female in estrus from miles and miles away. They can smell grubs buried inside a log.
That's a superpower. And to go with that super nose, they have pretty good eyes too, right? Unlike most carnivores, they have color vision.
Yes, most canids, like dogs, are red-green colorblind, but bears have color vision that's very similar to ours.
Why? What's the advantage?
Because they need to spot ripe fruit. A patch of red berries against a backdrop of green leaves is almost invisible to a dog, but for a bear, it pops like a neon sign.
This brings us right back to that digestive paradox I mentioned at the start. We have this animal with the nose of a super predator, the claws of a digger, and the eyes of a fruit gatherer. But then you look at the gut.
And the gut is where things get really confusing. Anatomy-wise, a bear is a carnivore. It has a single stomach, a very short small intestine, and no cecum.
Okay, remind me what a cecum is again.
It's a pouch in the digestive tract. In true herbivores, like horses or rabbits, the cecum is this big fermentation tank. It's filled with specialized bacteria that break down tough plant cellulose so the animal can actually get energy from it. Bears don't have one.
So if they eat a salad, it's just, it passes right through them.
Largely, yes. They are incredibly inefficient at digesting plants. And yet, for most bears, brown bears, black bears' plants make up a huge percentage of their diet. Roots, grasses, berries.
So they're just running a volume game. They just have to eat constantly.
Exactly. They have to eat massive amounts because they aren't extracting all the nutrients from what they consume. But the most extreme, almost absurd example of this inefficiency is the giant panda.
The panda problem.
It really is a biological problem. Here you have an animal that eats bamboo, which is almost entirely tough cellulose for 99% of its diet.
Right.
But it still has the short, carnivorous gut of a bear. It has the genes for digesting meat, not plants. It completely lacks the specialized gut microbes that other herbivores use to break down cellulose efficiently.
So how is it alive? How does that even work?
By doing absolutely nothing else but eating. Because they digest less than 20% of what they eat, they have to process about 20 to 40 pounds of bamboo every single day.
40 pounds.
To do that, they have to eat for 12 to 15 hours a day. Their entire life is just a desperate race to consume enough calories to not starve.
That sounds miserable.
It's an evolutionary trap. They found a food source that no one else wanted, bamboo, so there was no competition. But the cost is that they have to spend their entire waking life just chewing. And because they get so little energy from it, they can't afford to move much. That's why pandas seem so lazy. They're not lazy, they're energy bankrupt.
And then on the complete other end of the dietary spectrum, you have the sloth bear.
Ah.
I saw the note about its teeth, and I had to double-check it because I thought it was a typo.
The vacuum cleaner adaptation? It's amazing. The sloth bear in India eats termites and ants. To do this, it has evolved to lose its 2 upper front teeth, the incisors.
It just has a gap in its grill.
A permanent gap. They can seal their lips around a termite hole, close their nostrils so they don't inhale bugs, and then suck air through that gap in their teeth.
So it's literally a vacuum.
A high-powered organic vacuum. The sound is incredibly loud. You can apparently hear it from hundreds of yards away.
It's just amazing how the face and the habits can change so drastically, but the gut remains this stubborn, primitive carnivore tube.
It just shows that evolution works with what it has. It doesn't design perfection from scratch.
Yeah.
It hacks together solutions that are good enough to survive.
Speaking of good enough, let's talk about the thing that bears do better than almost any other animal on Earth. Hibernation.
The metabolic miracle.
Yeah. We grew up thinking, oh, the bear just sleeps. It's cartoon image, the bear puts on a nightcap, gets into a cozy bed, and wakes up in the spring. But the reality is so much more alien than that.
It is not sleep. Let's be very, very clear about that. Sleep is a brain state. Hibernation is a total metabolic overhaul. It is a state of dormancy that pushes the very boundaries of what is biologically possible for a mammal of that size.
Okay, so let's look at the stats. What happens to the engine when they park the car for the winter?
First, let's talk about the heart rate. A normal resting heart rate for a bear is around 55 beats per minute. When it goes into the den, that drops.
To what, 30? 20?
As low as 9 beats per minute.
9? No way. That's...
The laws is to tap a slow rhythm.
But beat. Long pause. Beat. That's essentially dead.
It's hovering right on the edge. But here's the really weird catch. In small hibernators, like ground squirrels or bats, their body temperature drops to near freezing. They basically become little ice cubes.
Right.
But the bear, its body temperature only drops a few degrees, maybe from 37 degrees Celsius down to 33 degrees or 30 degrees C.
Why keep the heat on if the heart is barely beating? That seems like a huge waste of precious energy.
It's very expensive, energetically speaking, yes, but they do it for 2 critical reasons. One, defense.
Defense.
If a wolf or a wolverine crawls into a ground squirrel's burrow, that squirrel is a frozen popsicle. It can't move. It takes hours for it to warm up. But if a threat enters a bear den, the bear's warm enough that it can wake up and fight almost instantly.
Wow. Okay, and the second reason?
The cubs. Bears give birth in the middle of winter in the den. You cannot nurse and raise tiny, hairless, helpless newborns if your body is at 0 degrees Celsius. The mother has to be a radiant heater for them.
We'll get to the cubs. That's a whole other story. But I want to stay on the physiology for a second. The sources mentioned a specific protein called myosin. This seemed to be the secret sauce for how the heart can do this.
This is brand new science, and it's incredible. Myosin is the protein in our muscle fibers that makes them contract. In a normal state, our muscles are always burning a little bit of energy, a little bit of ATP, even when they're at rest.
Just to maintain tone.
Right. But in hibernating bears, their myosin shifts into what scientists are calling a super relaxed state. The molecules physically rearrange themselves to stop consuming ATP.
So they just disconnect the battery from the muscle.
Effectively, yes. This allows the heart to beat that slowly without the muscle tissue degrading and without burning through their precious fat stores too quickly. It's molecular efficiency at the highest possible level.
But the thing that really stops me in my tracks, the thing that I think most listeners will have a hard time believing, is the bathroom situation.
The no bathroom rule, yes.
Walk us through this, because it sounds like science fiction.
It is simple and, frankly, terrifying. A hibernating bear does not eat, does not drink, does not urinate, and does not defecate for up to 100 days, sometimes even longer.
Okay, let's break that down. Let's start with urination. If I, a human, didn't pee for a week, I would be dead.
You would die of uremic poisoning, yes. Your kidneys filter waste, specifically a compound called urea, out of your blood. Urea is the byproduct of breaking down protein. If you don't pee it out, it builds up in your blood, becomes toxic ammonia, and it kills you.
So how does the bear not poison itself?
This is the absolute genius part of the whole system. The bear recycles it.
It recycles its pee.
It recycles the urea. Instead of sending the urea-rich blood to the kidneys to be filtered out, the bear's body takes that urea and pumps it back into the blood and then into the gut.
Into the gut? What for?
Yes. In the gut, there are specific bacteria that break the urea down into ammonia, and then, and this is the magic trick, the bear's liver takes that ammonia and uses it to build new amino acids, specifically an amino acid called glutamine.
Wait, hold on. So they're taking the toxic waste product that usually kills you, and they were turning it back into the fundamental building blocks of muscle.
Exactly. They are literally turning their own pee into protein. This is the secret to why bears don't lose significant muscle mass in the winter. If you laid in a hospital bed for 3 months, your muscles would atrophy to nothing. You'd be weak as a kitten. A bear wakes up strong because it has been synthesizing new protein from its own waste the entire time.
That is a perfect closed-loop system. It's like a space station.
It is the ultimate biological recycling plant. It's
Yeah.
magnificent.
Yeah, the other end of the system. The solid waste.
Well, since they aren't eating, there isn't much new waste being produced. But there are cells shedding from the intestinal wall, hair they swallow while grooming before they go to sleep. All this stuff forms what's called a fecal plug in the lower colon.
A plug.
A literal plug. It's a hard, dry mass of hair, cells, and plant material that blocks the exit. It keeps everything sealed up tight until spring. When they wake up, expelling that plug is the very first order of business.
I can only imagine. It's just incredible that evolution figured this out. Don't waste the nitrogen. Let's build biceps with it instead.
And interestingly, size acts as a constraint here. The system works best when you are big, but the smaller bears can actually hibernate for longer periods than the really massive males.
How does that work?
Because they have a better surface area to volume ratio, they can lower their metabolic rate more easily and cool down more efficiently. The massive boars have a harder time shedding heat, so they burn through their energy reserves faster.
So the big dog is actually a very delicate thermal engine.
Precisely.
Okay, let's step out of the den now.
Yeah.
The bear wakes up. It pulls the plug, literally. What is their life like out in the world?
Yeah.
Because based on all the research, they seem like the ultimate loners.
They are. With the major exception of a mother and her cubs, bears are fundamentally asocial animals. They don't have packs like wolves. They don't have herds. They actively avoid each other.
But wait, we've all seen the videos. The famous ones from Brooks Falls in Alaska. There are 20, 30 bears all standing in the river at once during the salmon run.
That is the exception that proves the rule. Bears are pragmatic. They will tolerate each other's presence only when a resource is so overwhelmingly abundant, like a massive salmon run, that fighting over it isn't worth the energy. There's enough for everyone.
So they're not hanging out. They're just commuting to the same cafeteria.
Exactly. And if you watch those videos closely, they aren't being social. They are maintaining a very strict personal bubble. There is a clear hierarchy in place.
How is that hierarchy established?
By size and aggression, it's a brutal system. The biggest, most dominant males get the best fishing spots, the ones at the top of the falls where the salmon literally jump right into their mouths.
And everyone else.
The females, the younger subadults, they get the perimeter. They have to wait for scraps downstream. And if you step out of line, if a younger bear tries to take a prime spot, swift and decisive violence. If you ever see footage of those old male bears up close, you'll see their faces are just covered in scars. Their ears are torn and they have missing patches of fur. Those are the receipts of a lifetime of enforcing dominance.
So if they don't like to fight unless they have to, how do they communicate? If I'm a bear and I want to tell you to back off without actually biting you, what do I do?
You use a whole suite of sound and body language. We all think of the big roar, but bears are actually much more subtle than that. If a bear is stressed or annoyed, it does something called jaw popping.
Jaw popping. What does that sound like?
It's a loud crack. They snap their jaws together with incredible force. It sounds like a gunshot or a dry branch breaking. It's a very clear, unambiguous signal. I am anxious. I am dangerous. Go away now.
Are there friendly sounds?
Yes. Chuffing. It's this breathy, puffing sound. Mothers use it with their cubs all the time. It's a reassurance signal. It means, I'm here, it's okay.
They also leave messages for each other, right? I was reading about the scent marking. It sounded like they're treating the forest like a community bulletin board.
They absolutely are. A big male bear will find a prominent tree on a trail, stand up on his hind legs to his full height, and rub his back and shoulders against it. He's grinding his personal scent deep into the bark. Then he might turn around and bite the tree, tearing out huge chunks of it.
So he's leaving a message that says, I smell this strong and my mouth is this high off the ground.
Exactly. It's a measurement. If another smaller bear comes along and smells that mark, but his own nose is 2 feet lower than the bite mark, he knows, okay, the guy who lives here is a giant. I should probably just keep moving and avoid trouble.
And the panda, being the panda, has to do it differently, of course.
Of course. The panda has specialized scent glands under its tail. It secretes this waxy substance, and to get it as high up on a tree as possible, a panda will essentially do a handstand.
A handstand?
They back up to the tree with their hind legs walking up the trunk until they're almost upside down, just to leave their mark as high as they possibly can.
That is a hilarious image.
Yeah.
An acrobatic pea contest.
It works for them. And for polar bears living out on the sea ice, the problem is that there are no trees, so they leave scent in their footprints.
In the snow. How does that work?
They have sweat glands in their paws. As they walk across the ice, they leave a chemical trail. In the endless, featureless white void of the Arctic, those footprints are the only road signs. A male polar bear can follow a female's tracks for days just by the scent she leaves behind in the ice crystals.
Let's talk about that female. Because the reproduction cycle of the bear is, well, the word bizarre is the only one that comes to mind.
It features a very clever biological trick called delayed implantation.
The biological pause button.
The ultimate pause button. So bears will mate in the late spring or early summer. The egg is fertilized. It divides a few times to become a blastocyst, just a tiny ball of cells. But then it stops. It doesn't attach to the uterine wall. It just floats there in suspended animation.
For how long?
For months, all through the summer and into the late autumn.
What is the logic there? Why not just start growing the baby right away?
Because the mother doesn't know if she's going to have a good year yet. She needs to spend the entire summer and autumn just eating. She needs to pack on hundreds of pounds of fat to survive the winter and produce milk. If she gets to November and she's skinny, her body makes a calculated decision. We can't afford this. The embryo is simply reabsorbed. No pregnancy that year.
That is incredibly smart. It's like a biological escrow account.
It's crucial for survival. But if she is fat enough, if she has enough reserves, her hormones send a signal, the egg implants, and gestation finally begins. But because it starts so late in the year, the actual gestation is incredibly short. Only about 6 to 8 weeks of real development.
And that leads to the impossibly tiny babies.
Absurdly tiny. A mother grizzly can weigh 700 pounds. Our newborn cub weighs less than 1 pound. It's the size of a chipmunk. It's born blind, virtually hairless, and completely helpless.
It's the highest size ratio between mother and newborn in placental mammals, right?
Aside from marsupials like kangaroos, yes, it only works because the den acts as a kind of external womb. The mother is hibernating, but her milk production is high. The cubs just latch on and grow in the dark, safe and warm, fueled by the fat she spent all summer storing.
But safety is relative. The outline mentioned infanticide. This is the very dark side of bear behavior.
It is brutal, but from a certain point of view, it's cold evolutionary math. Male bears will actively hunt and kill cubs that are not their own.
Why? That seems so counterproductive for the species as a whole.
Evolution doesn't care about the species. It cares about the individual's genes getting passed on. Here is the logic. A female bear with cubs will not mate. She is completely devoted to raising them for 2 to 3 years. She is off the market.
Okay, so she's unavailable.
Right. Now, if a new dominant male comes into the territory and kills those cubs, the female's lactation stops. Her hormones reset, and she goes back into estrus. She becomes ready to mate again, usually within just a few days.
So by killing the cubs.
By killing the cubs, the male gets a chance to father his own offspring immediately, rather than having to wait 3 years for her to be receptive again.
That is just grim.
It is nature red in tooth and claw. And this is why female bears with cubs are so terrifyingly aggressive. A mother bear knows that any strange male she encounters is a lethal threat to her genetic legacy. She isn't just protecting her babies in an abstract, affectionate way. She's protecting her entire lifetime reproductive success. She will fight a male twice her size to the death to protect them.
That really changes the perspective on the whole mama bear trope. It's not just about affection. It's a desperate life or death defense against a very real biological threat.
Exactly.
Let's pivot now. We've looked at the biology, the history, the behavior. Now we're looking in the mirror at us, at the relationship between humans and bears.
A relationship that is as old as humanity itself.
We started with the linguistic taboo, but the connection goes so much deeper than that. It goes all the way to the stars.
Ursa Major, the Great Bear.
This is one of the few constellations that actually looks somewhat like what it's supposed to be. But the research suggests that seeing a bear in those stars isn't just some random coincidence.
No, this is one of the most fascinating pieces of comparative anthropology. Cultures all across the Northern Hemisphere, from the ancient Greek poets to the Native American tribes of the Iroquois and the Algonquin, all looked at that same square of stars and the handle and said, that is a bear.
How is that possible? Those cultures were separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years.
The leading theory is that the story, the cosmic hunt myth, is older than the separation of those peoples. It likely dates back to the Paleolithic era, more than 13,000 years ago. When the first humans crossed the Bering Land Bridge from Asia into the Americas, they brought the story of the Great Bear in the sky with them.
That gives me chills. So when you and I look up at the Big Dipper, we are seeing a story that our ancestors were telling each other in caves during the Ice Age.
Exactly. And in most versions of the myth, the bowl of the dipper is the bear itself, and the 3 stars of the handle are the hunters who are chasing it.
And the chase has a purpose.
It does. The myth says the hunt happens every year. In the autumn, the hunters finally catch the bear. Its blood falls to the earth and turns the leaves red and orange. That's the fall foliage. The bear then dies and goes into its den, which is hibernation, and then it is reborn in the spring.
It's the cycle of the seasons, encoded in a story in the sky.
And on the ground, that reverence was just as real. You had actual bear cults. The Ainu people of Japan, for instance, worshipped the bear as a powerful god that walked among them in the physical world.
And in ancient Greece.
The goddess of the hunt, Artemis, was deeply associated with bears. There was a famous cult where young Athenian girls had to go through a ritual called the Arctia. They would dress as bears' arctoi to mark their transition into womanhood.
So we went from worshiping them as star gods and powerful spirits to the teddy bear.
The ultimate domestication, isn't it? We took the most powerful and feared predator in our ancestral environment and we turned it into a child's toy.
The story of the teddy bear is actually very specific, isn't it? It involves a U.S. president.
Theodore Teddy Roosevelt. The year was 1902. He was on a bear hunting trip in Mississippi, and he was having no luck. So his guys, trying to be helpful, went out and cornered an old American black bear. They beat it, tied it to a willow tree, and then called the president over and said, "Here, Mr. President, shoot it."
Talk about unsportsmanlike.
That's exactly what Roosevelt said. He was disgusted. He refused to shoot an injured, bound animal. He called it unsportsmanlike conduct and demanded they put the poor animal out of its misery.
And the story got out.
The story got out. A political cartoonist drew the scene for the newspapers, and a toy maker in Brooklyn, a man named Morris Mictum, saw the cartoon, made a little stuffed plush bear, and put it in his shop window. He asked for and received permission from the president to call it Teddy's Bear.
And suddenly, the monster of the woods is something you tuck your kids in with at night.
It completely softened the public image of the bear. It went from the brown one that summons death to Winnie the Pooh and Yogi Bear.
But the reality of our interaction isn't always plush toys and cartoons. We have a long, dark history of exploiting these animals.
We do. In Shakespeare's time, bear baiting was a huge public spectacle. You'd go to the theater to see Hamlet, or you could go next door to the bear garden to watch a bear chained to a post fighting off a pack of mastiffs for entertainment.
And today, that exploitation has shifted to something more. Chemical. Bile farming.
This is the hard part of the deep dive. In traditional Chinese medicine, bear bile has been used for thousands of years. The active ingredient is a compound called ursodeoxycholic acid, or UDCA.
And what does it do?
It can help dissolve certain kinds of gallstones and treat some liver diseases.
So it works.
Chemically, yes, the compound is effective. But here's the absolute tragedy of the situation. We do not need the bear.
We make it in a lab.
Easily. We have been able to synthesize UDCA for decades. It is cheap, it is pure, and it involves zero animal suffering.
But the farms still exist.
They do. In parts of Asia, thousands of bears, mostly moon bears or Asiatic black bears, are kept in tiny crush cages their entire lives, so small they can't even turn around. And bile is extracted from their gallbladders, often through a permanent catheter. It is a grueling, painful existence.
Why does it persist if there's a synthetic version?
It persists largely because of a deep-seated cultural belief that the wild or natural product is more potent than the synthetic one. It's the same kind of thinking that drives rhino poaching.
That's heartbreaking.
It is. But awareness is growing. There are amazing rescue sanctuaries now, and younger generations in those countries are moving away from these traditional remedies. But it is a very slow process.
It really highlights the vulnerability of the bear family. We think of them as these invincible forces of nature, but they aren't.
Not at all. 6 out of the 8 living bear species are listed as vulnerable by the IUCN, the sun bear, the sloth bear, the spectacled bear. They're all losing their forests to deforestation and facing pressure from poaching.
But there is one major success story we have to mention. The panda.
The panda is the poster child. Literally, it's the logo of the World Wildlife Fund for a reason. In the 1980s, the panda was doomed. There were only a few hundred left in the wild. But the Chinese government launched a massive concerted conservation effort.
What did they do?
They created the Sichuan Giant Panda sanctuaries. They connected fragmented bamboo forests with corridors so populations could mix. They cracked down hard on poaching, and they invested heavily in captive breeding programs.
And it worked.
It worked. The wild population has rebounded significantly, so much so that a few years ago, they were officially downgraded from endangered to vulnerable. It proves that if we actually care, if we put the resources and the political will behind it, we can save these species. We can find a way to coexist with the brown one.
So we've covered the linguistic taboo, the surprising seal cousins, the nitrogen recycling sleep, and this long, complicated history with humans. It's a lot to process.
It is. The bear is an animal that demands our respect, not just for its physical power, but for its incredible biological sophistication.
As we wrap up this deep dive, is there one final thought you want to leave our listeners with? Something for them to chew on?
I think so. We talked a lot about hibernation. I want you to go back to that nitrogen recycling trick for a minute.
Okay. The muscle preservation.
Right now, humanity is looking seriously at Mars. We want to be an interplanetary species. But one of the biggest hurdles for long-duration space travel isn't the rocket. It's the fragility of the human body.
Muscle atrophy and zero-G.
Exactly. If you put an astronaut in zero gravity for the 6 to 9 months it takes to get to Mars, their muscles waste away, their bones weaken. They might arrive at Mars too weak to even put on their spacesuit and walk around.
Right, we just aren't built for stasis.
But bears are. Bears have cracked the code. They have figured out how to stay almost completely immobile for months on end and keep their muscle mass, their bone density, and their organ function perfectly intact. They hold the biological blueprint for a safe form of suspended animation.
So you're saying?
I'm saying that if medical science can fully unlock the bear's secret, if we can figure out how to trigger that super relaxed myosin state and that nitrogen recycling loop in humans, it changes everything.
Not just for space travel.
Not just for space. Think about coma patients not wasting away in a hospital bed. Think about the elderly maintaining their strength while they're bedridden after a fall. The potential applications for human health are staggering.
The key to our future in the stars might be sleeping in a cave right now.
We just have to be smart enough to learn from them rather than just fearing them or turning them into toys.
That is a fascinating place to end. From the brown one to the astronaut's guide to the galaxy. Thank you for listening to this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.
Keep exploring.
Welcome to the debate. Today, we're looking at a creature that seems to hold this very specific, almost primal place in the human imagination, the bear. When you picture a grizzly standing on its hind legs, 8 feet of muscle, claws the length of your fingers, a head the size of a boulder, you are looking at what appears to be the ultimate expression of biological power. To me, the family Ursidae it's the tank of the animal kingdom. It is the apex pinnacle of the order Carnivora. But is that actually true? Or is the bear, as we're going to discuss, essentially a biological misunderstanding?
Misunderstanding is a very polite way to put it. I look at that same grizzly, and I don't see a tank at all. I see a creature that is frankly barely holding itself together. It's an animal that's trying to be 3 different things at once and while failing at most of them. To me, the bear isn't a masterpiece of evolution, it's a hack. It's an evolutionary improvisation that somehow manages to survive despite breaking every single rule in the book.
That is a staggering claim for an animal that has conquered, pretty much the entire northern hemisphere.
Is it though? Think about how we even talk about them. The word bear itself is a clue. It comes from the Old English bera, which, likely just means the brown one. It's a euphemism. The Proto-Germanic tribes were apparently so terrified of this animal that they believed if you spoke its true name, Artto, it would actually summon the beast out of the woods. So even our language is based on this deep-seated fear and avoidance. We treat it like a monster because we're scared of it. But when you strip away the fear and you look at the actual physiology, the quote-unquote monster is, well, it's a mess.
See, I think that fear proves my point entirely. We don't create linguistic taboos around weak animals, we create them around forces of nature, and that is what a bear is. It is the most massive extant terrestrial member of the carnivora. That isn't an accident. Evolution favored mass and power because it works. And when you look at the skeletal morphology, you aren't seeing a hack. You are seeing a machine built for absolute leverage. Massive skulls, thick, dense limb bones, just designed to support immense bulk. This is a creature built to dominate its environment through sheer brute force.
Brute force is a great strategy if you're a rock falling down a hill. But for a complex mammal, it's just inefficient. And you call them the pinnacle of carnivora, but that label is incredibly misleading for how these animals actually live. If the bear is the perfect predator, explain the giant panda to me. Here you have an animal with the digestive system of a wolf, a single stomach, short intestines, genes specifically coded for meat digestion, and yet it sits there eating 99% bamboo. That is not a tank. That is a physiological paradox. It's a carnivore trying its best to be a cow.
Okay, but the panda is the extreme outlier. You can't judge the whole family by its weirdest cousin.
But the inefficiency is there across the entire family. It's not just the panda. Look at the sloth bear. It lost its 2 front upper teeth just so it can act like a vacuum cleaner for termites. And look at how they move. This, for me, is the smoking gun. Cats and dogs are digitigrade. They run on their toes. That's what gives a sprinter that explosive speed, right? It lengthens the leg lever. Bears, they are plantigrade. They walk flat-footed on their heels, just like a human wearing snowshoes. It makes them lumbering. It makes them energy inefficient. My whole argument is that bears are successful not because they are perfect predators, but because they are generalist survivors. They're running herbivore software on carnivore hardware.
I think you're confusing specialization with failure. But let's actually open up the hood, because I want to challenge you on this carnivore hardware point. You think their digestion is a mistake. I think it's a very calculated trade-off.
It's hard to see the calculation when you look at the gut. I mean, let's get technical for a second. A true herbivore, like a cow or a deer, has a massive fermentation vat, a rumen or a huge cecum, where bacteria spend days breaking down tough plant cellulose into usable energy. Bears don't have that. They have a sleek, simple carnivore gut. No cecum, short intestines, food goes in, and it shoots out in just a few hours. Evolutionarily speaking, a bear eating grass is like trying to fuel a Ferrari with lawn clippings. The engine just isn't built for the fuel.
That's one way to view it. But here's the other perspective. Because they lack that fermentation vat, they aren't weighed down by it. A cow has to sit there and chew cud for hours on end. A bear is mobile, and because its gut is simple, it can process vast volumes of food very, very rapidly. It's a volume strategy.
They are what we call low-protein macronutrient omnivores. They don't just graze mindlessly. They target high-value resources. They high-grade their food.
But they have to high grade because their system is so bad at extracting nutrients. The panda has to eat for 12 to 15 hours a day just to not starve to death. It relies on its gut microbiome to do work that its own body physically cannot do. And yet, look at the brown bear. It dominates the salmon runs. When a bear is eating salmon, it's not eating the whole fish. It's eating the skin, the brain, the eggs, the highest fat content, and just discarding the rest. That is intelligence. They use their massive size, that tank frame you talked about, to monopolize the best food sources so they don't need a complex gut. They substitute efficiency with dominance. When you see Asiatic black bears in Taiwan switching between acorns and hunting ungulates, they aren't confused. They are maximizing their caloric intake based on what's available.
Maximizing implies they have a choice. I would argue they're in a constant state of nutritional panic. If the acorn crop fails, that bear is in big trouble because it can't simply switch to grazing on grass like a deer can, and it's not efficient enough to hunt mice like a fox. It's stuck in the middle. The only reason the system works at all is because they just throw massive amounts of food into the hopper. But let's go back to the movement. You mentioned the tank frame.
Right, the dense bones, the power.
But at what cost? You have this heavy, flat-footed animal. We established they are plantigrade, walking on their heels. That provides stability, sure, but it sacrifices speed and endurance. A wolf can trot for miles without tiring. A bear has to expend significantly more energy just to move its own mass from point A to point B. They tire very quickly, and this forces them into a hunting style that relies on ambush or brute force because they physically cannot sustain a chase. They are chemically incapable of being a pursuit predator.
I disagree that it's a disadvantage. The plantigrade foot allows for something a wolf can never do: bipedalism. A bear can stand up, it can fight on 2 legs, it can reach fruit high in trees, and it frees up the front paws for manipulation. A wolf interacts with the world with its mouth. A bear interacts with its hands. You mentioned the panda earlier. It developed a pseudo-thumb, a bony extension of the wrist, just to strip bamboo. That is evolutionary brilliance. It's tool use without the tool.
It's a wrist bone acting like a thumb because they don't have a real one. That's exactly what I mean by a hack. But look at the history here. The ancestors of bears, like Ursidae, were these small, raccoon-sized things. As the lineage evolved, they just got bigger and heavier. But they kept the same basic body plan. The extinct short-faced bear, Arctotis, was a giant, but even it had to specialize to survive. And the cave bear, Ursa Spelaeus, it evolved these massive teeth for grinding plants, got huge, and then went extinct the moment the climate shifted because it had painted itself into a corner. The tank strategy is risky. If you are big and slow, you need a lot of food. And if the food moves or disappears, you die.
And yet the family Ursidae is still here. The cave bear is gone, yes, but the brown bear remains, the polar bear remains. And speaking of the polar bear, Ursus maritimus, this really is the checkmate to your bad design argument. Here is an animal that took that generalist frame and moved into the harshest environment on Earth. It returned to pure carnivory. It hunts seals on sea ice. It proves that the underlying machinery is predatory. When the environment demanded it, the bear didn't become a better herbivore. It became the ultimate carnivore.
Or as it suggests that the polar bear is the only one actually using the machinery for what it was designed for, while the rest of the family is just, pretending to be vegetarian. But even the polar bear is struggling now that the ice is melting. It's hyper-specialized. But I want to talk about how they survive the times when there is no food, because this is usually the part where people say, but hibernation is a superpower.
Because it is a superpower, you cannot just dismiss hibernation. It is a metabolic masterpiece. We're talking about an animal the size of a grand piano that can shut down its body for 5 to 7 months. This isn't just a nap. It is a physiological state that frankly defies medical understanding.
It's a desperate cope for caloric inefficiency.
Hold on. Let me explain the mechanics before you dismiss it. Their heart rate drops from 55 beats per minute to as low as 9. But the real magic is the chemistry. They don't urinate or defecate for months. If a human did that, we would die of uremic poisoning in a week. The bear takes that toxic urea, breaks it down, and recycles the nitrogen back into protein to maintain its muscle mass. It is a closed-loop biological recycling plant. They use a super relaxed state of the protein myosin in their muscles so they don't atrophy. They wake up in spring almost as strong as when they went to sleep. No other large mammal can do this.
I'll grant you, the chemistry is impressive. But you have to ask yourself why they have to do it. They have to do it because they are too big and too inefficient to survive the winter any other way. A wolf doesn't hibernate. A moose doesn't hibernate. They have strategies to find food in the snow. The bear's strategy is basically, I give up, I'm going to sleep until the salad bar opens again. And interestingly, that tank size you love so much is actually a problem here. Research shows that smaller bears can hibernate more efficiently than the massive ones. A grizzly has so much thermal inertia, it holds heat so well that it actually struggles to lower its body temperature enough to get the full metabolic savings. It's like trying to cool down a nuclear reactor just to save fuel. It's hard work.
But it works. They survive the season of death, and when they wake up, they navigate the world with a sensory apparatus that is just unparalleled. The bear's sense of smell is superior to that of a bloodhound. They can detect a carcass from kilometers away. Polar bears use scent tracks on the ice to find each other in a white void. You call them a hack, but they are operating with a guidance system that is military grade.
They are operating with one good sensor. They are essentially a giant nose on 4 legs. Have you noticed they don't have whiskers? They are unique among carnivores in that regard. Their sight is poor, their hearing is average. They sort of stumble through the world led by olfactory cues because their other senses just aren't sharp enough to hunt like a cat. A cougar uses sight and hearing to pinpoint prey. A bear sniffs around until it bumps into something edible. It's a brute force application of sensory input.
A nose that can find a seal under a meter of hard-packed snow is not brute force. That is precision. But I want to pivot to their mind, their behavior, because this is where the apex title is truly earned. They are solitary, powerful individualists.
Asocial is the word I would probably use.
Intelligent carnivores like wolves need a pack. They need a support system. A bear is a single unit of dominance. It doesn't need help. When two bears meet, they assert dominance through what's called frontal orientation, showing the canines, stretching the neck. It's honest signaling. They don't rely on the complexity of a hierarchy. They rely on the reality of their own strength.
That solitary nature is a weakness, though. It limits what they can do. A pack of wolves can take down a bison. A single bear has to be much, much more careful. And it makes them fragile. If a wolf breaks a leg, the pack might feed it. If a bear breaks a leg, it dies. That solitude dictates a life of extreme caution. Most bear interactions are just avoidance. They spend their entire lives trying not to fight, because a fight is just too expensive. And we should probably talk about the dark side of that individualism. Infanticide.
It's a brutal topic, but it's biologically significant. Male brown and polar bears will kill cubs to bring the female back into estrus.
It's horrific efficiency.
It is evolutionary strategy. It shows a drive for genetic dominance that overrides any sort of social niceties. The male is ensuring his genes propagate. It's not nice, but nature isn't nice. It's effective.
It's primitive. Social carnivores have moved past that. They raise young communally. But I will concede that bears aren't purely robotic monsters. We see spectacled bears in South America communicating with facial markings. We see aggregations at salmon runs where they tolerate each other. And obviously the mother-cub bond is fierce. But it's fleeting. Once those cubs are gone, they are back to being lonely wanderers.
They are wanderers because they require vast territories to fuel that massive engine. Which brings us right back to the central question. You see collection of parts that don't quite fit, a carnivore gut, a herbivore diet, flat feet, a solitary life. I see a synthesis. I see an animal that took a different path. It diverged from the dog-like ancestors 20 million years ago and just decided to maximize size and durability over speed.
And I still maintain they are evolutionary tinkerers. They are the jack of all trades, master of none. They can climb, but not like a monkey. They can swim, but not like a seal. They can hunt, but not like a wolf. And they can eat grass, but not like a cow. They are successful because they are stubborn, not because they are perfected.
Well, maybe stubbornness is just another word for resilience. Whether it is the polar bear on the ice or the sloth bear sucking up termites, the family Ursidae finds a way to impose its bulk on the world. They are the heavyweights. They are the great bears.
They are certainly unique. I mean, there is nothing else quite like them on Earth. And that uniqueness, I think, we have to note, is fragile. We should say that despite being these tanks, 6 of the 8 bear species are listed as vulnerable. Even the brown bear faces extinction in parts of its range.
It is a sobering reality. The great bear, Ursa Major, has been in our midst for 13,000 years. The cosmic hunt myths appear on both sides of the Bering Land Bridge. We have looked up at the stars and seen a bear for as long as we have been human.
That myth might outlast the animal if we aren't careful. Habitat loss, the trade in bear bile, climate change, these are threats that brute force cannot solve. The tank armor doesn't stop a bullet or a shrinking ice cap.
A tragedy we must work to prevent. I hope this debate has shifted your perspective, even slightly, on what is happening inside that massive frame.
It has. And for those listeners who want to see what a perfect predator bear might have looked like, one that actually followed the rules, I really encourage you to look up the extinct Hemisoninae, the running bears. These were bears that stayed on their toes. They chased prey like wolves. It's a fascinating glimpse of the road not taken.
The bear that could have been. Thank you for listening.
Welcome to the debate.